Expand your mind and enrich your world. It's time for another outstanding podcast from ICRT.
We're just about 2 weeks into Taiwan's latest food scandal, and as we work to assess the health risks posed by the 243 tons of tainted oil distributed by Changguan Oil Company, many are already criticizing the government's response and calling on it to step up its efforts to prevent any more incidents in the future. Today on the show, we're going to speak to the Homemakers United Foundation, which is one of several groups that recently issued a set of demands to the government to improve its response. Joining us by phone is the group's Secretary General, Lai Xiafan. Secretary General Lai, thanks so much for joining us.
Hello.
Once again, we're going to be doing this interview in Mandarin, so to help us out with interpretation is ICRT's Joey C. Joey, thanks for joining us today.
Anytime, Keith.
So, Secretary General Lai, your group, along with a lot of other groups, have really been critical of the government's response so far. Among the things you've said that the government has not been very transparent in how it's been making its decisions after the scandal occurred. It's been really slow to issue a plan or a timeline of when it might issue a plan, when it might implement some of these responses. But yesterday, Premier Zhang Yihua did announce a set of reforms, including tougher penalties in these cases, measures that would encourage whistleblowers to come forward. He's calling for more monitoring of the products as they go through the manufacturing process. Now that you've heard what the Premier is calling for, do you feel like that's a step in the right direction? Does that address any of the concerns that you had?
We feel the 8 points Premier Zhang Yihua made in his statement have already been brought up during the policy amendment earlier this year. Yet they still haven't been properly executed by policymakers. What is truly important is that we don't have an independent food safety committee to monitor the collusion between businesses, governmental and academic institutions. There should be more independent investigation bodies, such as academic institutions or civil groups that are competent in environmental or public health evaluations, to set viable standards in food safety risk management. In that sense, we also need the participation of more civil groups to supervise our government. Otherwise, we would just keep hearing the same answers, the same structures, and the same kind of inefficient policies like the ones proposed by the Premier on Thursday.
我们以这样解析赖秘书长，你觉得是否正确？
没有问题，就是这样子的意思。
There's also been a number of claims that the government is trying to downplay the health risks that are involved here. The FDA did release a statement that sort of indicated that the oil had been so diluted that it didn't really pose any real health risk. But a number of groups have called those findings into question. So I want to hear your take on that.
就是说，整个风险的管理跟沟通也做得非常差哈。
We feel the whole risk management and communication process was dealt with rather poorly. The government approached this incident by providing statistics to convince the public that the toxins in the tainted oil are not that harmful. But it was made very clear in all of the public health discussions that this is not a matter of the allowable amount. It is instead that even the slightest amount of this reused tainted oil is unacceptable.
你们的就是说政府的认知是这样，会是替厂商背书的话，那你站在你要消费者怎么会去相信你是站在我们这一边的？哈，这是非常大的失职。
When our government officials seem to be trying to cover for the misbehavior of these unethical businesses, how can the consumers possibly believe that the government has our best interest in mind? That is a clear negligence of duty.
那另外就是说，所有这 GMP 的认证都出包，我觉得它这部分其实都还没有好好的对国人有一个交代，就是你保证没问题的一个食品现在出了问题了。
In addition to that, our government has yet to answer how the GMP certification failed to pick up the tainted oil. A product that was guaranteed to be safe has been proven otherwise. Are we now going to allocate everyone's tax money towards nationwide compensations? And we haven't heard much from the ones who are responsible for this blunder. How are they going to respond to their negligence? Do they have systematic solution to this problem? We haven't seen much of these actions.
So now I want to switch gears a little bit and look a little bit more at why is this something that keeps happening in Taiwan over and over again? Of course, last year there was the incident with the Changsha foodstuff factory in which they were accused of putting illegal coloring agents into their edible oils. Before that, there was the plasticizer scandal from a number of years ago, and even before that, there was the heavy metal contamination in rice. So why is this something that keeps happening in Taiwan? What is the root cause that makes it possible for this to just happen over and over again?
好，就是说，台湾一直
Taiwan has always been the kingdom of gourmet food. We attract tourists with our local cuisine.
我觉得整个在谈美食的时候，其实也一直不断的在告诉民众，便宜又大碗，好。这样子是一种好的饮食的价值。
We always promote our food to be large in servings, yet reasonably priced. Economically speaking, our government has always geared towards low cost and component manufacturing, instead of focusing on brand management or the quality of goods and services. Internationally, we've always marked ourselves to be a cheap manufacturing country.
整个让我们不禁去怀疑，就是说，除了这一次的收水油之外，
While on the other hand, we have also failed to prevent other defective or tainted products from entering our borders, such as the gutter oil from China, which should have been the responsibility of Ministry of Health and Welfare to protect our free market structure. This leads us to suspect that there are many more defective and tainted products entering our borders, which poses a major threat for both the residents and tourists in Taiwan.
所以说，您觉得这个问题可能也源自于国人做生意以及对经济体系的一个态度，是吗？
对，我觉得这一次其实有很大的问题，还是来自于我们的一个道德跟伦理的沦丧嘛，哈。
Yes, I find that a lot of the problem has to do with deteriorated sense of morals. Our society and our educational system continue to reiterate the importance of convenience, accessibility, and speed. Like I said, cheap and quantitative are the keys.
那这样子，其实我觉得消费者不断在要求一个简便和快速的价值，最后整个市场就不断在提供这样的一个方式。
When the consumers continue to demand for this type of immediate and accessible services, that's what the industry will provide. We should start by educating our children at a young age and teaching them about our relationships with the food we eat. It's not just about satisfying our taste buds.
除了饮食教育之外，这些从事食品科学
Aside from food safety education, professionals involved in food science and technology should also incorporate self-monitoring committees or self-education to learn about food safety and ethics, which will all require fundamental changes to our values and education towards food.
我觉得政府的治理体系管理的问题非常的大。
I feel that there are a lot of problems with our government's management and supervision of less economically driven sectors, such as food safety, waste disposal, and recycling. Competent and effective management needs more improvement.
那另外一部分就是说，长期以来也放纵让业者所谓的去进行自主管理。
On the other hand, businesses have often been left to manage their own industries with no directions, which results in strictly profit-driven modes of conduct. There is no pressure from the government for businesses to consider their social responsibilities.
然后他们所制造的产品对他们来讲就是一个赚钱的工具，他没有想到这是要去
The goods produced by them are nothing more than tools to make money. Factors such as health, the land, people, and culture are not in this equation.
Your organization has actually released a set of proposals to the government for ways that it could help to prevent this kind of thing from happening in the future. So I want to talk about those right now. Among the proposals that you're calling for, you're saying that the various agencies that monitor the food need to hold a food safety conference and look for ways to make their monitoring of these food materials more stringent. Work together more and up their monitoring capabilities. So why is this something that you think is important to focus on?
我们看到就是说这一次的事件其实它的源头就是我们的废食用油没有好好的被回收。
We see that this incident originated from a failure to recycle or dispose of used oil. There are policies and regulations to prevent waste oil from re-entering the food industry, and waste oil usually become animal feed.
然后为什么这些油被回收没有好好被利用会跑到食品界？
How is it manufactured into eating oil? A multitude of government sectors are responsible for this negligence, including Ministry of Economics, Council of Agriculture, and Environmental Protection Administration.
那最后就是让卫福部来救火。
When all of these government agencies fail to properly execute their responsibilities, the only one left to put out the fire was Ministry of Health, which has comparably the least budget and personnel for food safety issues. This then led to some inappropriate statements made about the acceptable amount of negative health effects from consumptions of tainted oil.
那你就会发现说，其实所有这些部会他们的横向联系，还有他们所应该要面对的责任，他们自己都不知道不清楚。
We see from this incident that interministerial cooperation in our government seems to be very disorganized, that civil groups and the public would need to remind each agency of its responsibilities, while this should have been the duty of the executive yuan.
它已经有一个既有的所谓的食安的汇报的平台。
The executive yuan does hold interministerial food safety conferences, but only biannually.
我们其实不急着去指责，我们觉得你应该把你的一个好的统筹的管理的一个机制，让民众看得到，然后重拾我们的信心，这样子。
This is why we propose that the government must realize a better and more efficient organization of targeted responsibilities between all of the agencies.
All right, now I want to go on to the other two proposals that you have, and in a way, I kind of want to take them together because I feel like they're both kind of getting at the same thing. So the first one is you're saying that you want some kind of mechanism to exist to allow the public to be more involved in monitoring food safety. And then another thing that you're looking for is you want more basic education about food safety to be available to the public. So both of these to me feel like you're really looking to get the public more involved in food safety. So can you explain a little bit what exactly is it that you're looking for and why are these areas that you're hoping to focus on?
好。其实我们现在都已经知道问题了哈。
Now that we know the root of the problem, and that the government means to make improvements, we feel that the public must also play an independent and objective role in related committees, certification institutions, and food safety platforms in order to serve the best interest of consumers. If we can incorporate civil groups in the above-mentioned bodies of government, then we can better understand and help monitor food safety for the country.
那甚至我们在今年初在推相关法规的时候，你会看到整个业者、厂商还有国际的这些跨国企业不断的在施压哈，那不断的收买我们的政府官员哈。
Further, while lobbying for related policies, we find that businesses, manufacturers, and international corporations continue to influence and pressure our government officials to favor their benefits, which renders our government as a whole defenseless to the profit-driven motives. We find that social groups such as ourselves, if allowed to cooperate with the government, can help to buffer and monitor this type of coercion from aggressive businesses.
另外就是我们真的觉得说整个我们的教育，我们人跟土地跟自然跟自己那个整个关系是扭曲的哈。
Finally, we find that our value of the relationship between people, land, and nature is alarmingly distorted. In order to bridge the gap, we must also go about food education. Over the last few years, we have been discussing with scholars in the field regarding promotion of agricultural and food safety educations in schools and communities. These efforts are important but often overlooked because our society tends to only pay attention when crises occur. However, these types of rooted preventative measures, educational and cultural nurturing, are imperative to improvement, and that's why we proposed for food education.
So before we go today, just to give us a little bit of perspective, can you tell us about your organization's work on these food safety issues? I understand this isn't a new issue for you.
The Homemakers United Foundation has spent the last 20 years promoting waste oil recycling, following the footsteps of similar Japanese organizations. Civil groups, such as ourselves, have long been paying attention to this type of issues to prevent waste product from re-entering the food industry or water sources. We now ask our government to stop focusing solely on economic development and focus more on these types of livelihood issues. It's been a long and exhausting battle the people have been fighting on their own. We would like the government to start carrying out its responsibilities and finally face their issues directly.
We've been speaking to Homemakers United Foundation's Secretary General Lai Xiafan. Secretary General Lai, thanks so much for joining us.
谢谢，非常谢谢你们。
Thanks for listening to Taiwan Talk. As always, we'd love to hear what you thought of today's program. You can leave us a comment on our Facebook page or rate and review Taiwan Talk on iTunes. For ICRT, I'm Keith Manconi.
And I'm Joey C.